That's for stealing my wife and my savings.
The first thing you need to know about my wife, Sarah, is that she's always been smarter than me. Second thing, she thought I was too stupid to figure out what she was doing behind my back. Third thing, she was wrong on that last count, and now she's about to learn exactly how wrong. I'm Dave Sullivan, 43 years old, owner of Sullivan Construction, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a decent marriage. Sure, Sarah worked late at St. Mary's Hospital where she'd climbed her way up to assistant administrator, and sure, we hadn't been intimate in months. But I figured that's what happens after 15 years of marriage. You settle into routines, you get comfortable, you trust each other. Turns out trust is like a house built on a bad foundation. Looks solid from the outside, but one good shake and the whole thing comes crashing down. The shake came on a Tuesday night when I got home from a job site, covered in drywall dust and looking forward to a beer and maybe catching some baseball. Sarah was in the kitchen, talking on her phone, wearing this ridiculous nun costume from last Halloween. Now, I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I build things, fix things, solve problems with my hands. But there was something about the way she was laughing that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Sister Mary Catherine has been very naughty," she was saying into the phone, her voice dropping to that sultry tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. Maybe she needs some special confession time. I stood there in the doorway, invisible in my work clothes, watching my wife of 15 years flirt with someone who definitely wasn't me. She was twirling around in that black and white habit like she was auditioning for an adult movie, completely oblivious to my presence. "The conference runs through Friday," she continued. "Plenty of time for private consultations." Conference, right. Sarah's monthly medical conferences had been going on for almost a year now. Funny how she never brought back any educational materials or talked about what she'd learned. Even funnier how she always came back looking like she'd spent the weekend at a spa instead of listening to lectures about hospital administration. That's when I noticed the box of rubbers on the counter next to her purse. Trojans. Economy size. We hadn't used rubbers since our second year of marriage. Not since Sarah went on the pill. But there they were, sitting right there like a neon sign advertising my wife's extracurricular activities. Sarah finished her call and finally noticed me standing there. "Oh, Dave, you're home early." She quickly shoved the rubbers into her purse, but not before I got a good look. "I was just confirming my travel arrangements for tomorrow's conference." "In the nun outfit?" I asked. She laughed, that fake tinkle she used when she was nervous. "Silly me. I was trying it on for next weekend's costume party at the hospital. You know how these medical people love their theme parties." I nodded, playing the part of the clueless husband. "Sure thing, honey. Have fun at your conference." But as she headed upstairs to pack, I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my pocket knife, the same one I'd carried for 20 years on job sites, and carefully poked a hole through every single rubber wrapper in that box. Not big holes, mind you, just tiny pinpricks that would be invisible unless you were really looking. "Let's see if the saints are watching, honey," I muttered under my breath as I resealed the box. The next morning, Sarah kissed me goodbye like the loving wife she pretended to be. "I'll be back Sunday evening," she said, wheeling her suitcase toward the door. "Try not to burn the house down while I'm gone." I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded her car with enough luggage for a month-long vacation, not a 3-day medical conference. As her Honda disappeared down our street, I finished my coffee and started planning. You see, I've been building things my whole life. Houses, additions, custom cabinets. I understand how structures work, how all the pieces fit together, and most importantly, how to take them apart when they are built on lies. My marriage had been constructed on a foundation of deception, and it was time for some demolition. First things first, I needed evidence. Sarah thought she was clever, hiding her tracks like some kind of spy, but she'd gotten sloppy. 15 years of marriage had made her comfortable, careless. She'd forgotten that I was the one who installed the wireless router, set up all our accounts, and had access to everything in our house. I started with her laptop. The one she claimed was just for work stuff. Password was easy enough. Her maiden name, plus the year we got married. Original. Her email was clean, but that didn't surprise me. Sarah was too smart to use her main account for anything incriminating. Then I remembered something. A few months back, I'd found a travel-size shampoo bottle in her gym bag. Strange, since Sarah always used the expensive stuff from the salon. I'd thought nothing of it at the time, but now it seemed worth investigating. I found the bottle in her bathroom cabinet, hidden behind a row of moisturizers and face masks. It was heavier than it should be. When I unscrewed the bottom, a small flip phone fell into my palm. Bingo. The phone was ancient by today's standards, one of those pay-as-you-go burner phones you can buy at any gas station. Smart move, really. No contract, no bills coming to the house, no digital footprint. Sarah had been planning this operation like a military campaign. I turned it on and scrolled through the messages. What I found made my stomach turn and my anger burn white hot. The contact was listed as Dr. Feelgood. Cute, real cute. And based on the timestamps, they'd been going at this for almost 8 months. The messages were explicit enough to make a sailor blush, and detailed enough to leave no doubt about what my wife had been doing during her conferences. "Can't wait to see you in your nurse outfit," one message read. "I've been a very bad patient." "Sister Mary Catherine needs to practice her bedside manner," Sarah had replied. "Bring the handcuffs from your sales kit." Sales kit. That narrowed things down. Sarah worked at a hospital, and the only salespeople who regularly visited hospitals were pharmaceutical reps. I scrolled through more messages looking for clues about her lover's identity. Found it in a message from last month. "Tommy says the new heart medication samples came in. Perfect excuse to visit your floor tomorrow." Tommy, pharmaceutical rep. Probably one of those slick-talking pretty boys in expensive suits who charmed their way past hospital staff to push the latest miracle pills. I'd met a few of them at hospital fundraisers over the years, all flash and no substance, the kind of men who drove leased BMWs and wore cologne that cost more than my work boots. But which Tommy? I needed more information. I spent the next few hours combing through every message on that phone. The picture that emerged made me sick. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown relationship. They had pet names for each other, inside jokes, detailed plans for a future that didn't include me. The most damaging message was from 2 weeks ago. "Dave's so clueless, he actually thanked me for working late last night. By Christmas, we'll have enough saved to make our move. He'll never see it coming." Our move. Our savings account. The one I'd been contributing to for 15 years, working double shifts and weekend jobs to build our nest egg. Sarah and her Tommy were planning to clean me out and disappear together. I sat there in my kitchen, still wearing yesterday's work clothes, holding the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. Not heartbreak, I was past that. This was something else. This was rage, pure and focused, the kind that builds houses and tears them down. Sarah thought I was stupid, thought I was some knuckle-dragging contractor who wouldn't notice his wife stepping out on him. She'd underestimated me, and that was going to be her biggest mistake. I powered up my laptop and started researching. If Tommy was a pharmaceutical rep who visited St. Mary's regularly, there would be a paper trail. Hospital visitor logs, sales call schedules, company rosters, everything I needed to identify my target. It took me 3 hours and several phone calls to friends who worked in various capacities around town, but I finally had my answer. Tommy Patterson, 38 years old, pharmaceutical sales representative for MedCorp Industries, married to Linda Patterson, 2 kids, lived in the upscale Meadowbrook development about 10 miles from our house. Perfect. I grabbed my phone and typed a message using Sarah's burner. "Congratulations, Tommy. Hope you're ready to be a daddy." Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks to start. His response came within minutes. "What are you talking about? We've been careful." "Careful doesn't always work," I typed back. "Maybe we should meet to discuss our options." "This can't be happening. Linda will end me if she finds out." "Then I guess you better figure out what you're going to do about it." I could practically hear him panicking through the phone. Good. Let him sweat for a while. But Tommy's panic was just the appetizer. The main course was going to be much more satisfying. I spent the weekend preparing. First, I made copies of every incriminating message on Sarah's burner phone, printing them out and organizing them chronologically. Then I did some reconnaissance on Tommy Patterson. Tommy lived well for a guy pushing pills. The house was a McMansion with a circular driveway and enough lawn to require a riding mower. His BMW was parked out front like a trophy. Probably leased, but impressive enough to the suburban housewives he was trying to impress. I watched the house for a few hours Saturday morning, noting the family routines. Linda Patterson was an attractive woman in her late 30s, probably a stay-at-home mom based on the way she shuffled kids around in a minivan. The kids looked to be elementary school age, innocent casualties in their father's midlife crisis. This was going to be tricky. I wanted to hurt Tommy and Sarah, but I didn't want to destroy those kids' lives any more than necessary. Collateral damage was inevitable, but I wasn't a monster. Sunday evening came, and Sarah returned from her conference looking relaxed and satisfied. She kissed my cheek and asked about my weekend like nothing had changed. "Pretty quiet," I said. "Got some work done around the house. How was the conference?" "Oh, same old presentations about hospital efficiency and patient care." She was a good liar, I'd give her that. "But I did learn some interesting techniques for improving staff morale." "I bet you did." She gave me a sharp look, but I kept my expression neutral. "Not yet." The timing had to be perfect. Monday morning, Sarah left for work as usual. I waited an hour, then drove to St. Mary's Hospital. I knew the place well. I'd done maintenance work there over the years, installing security cameras and updating electrical systems. The staff knew me as Sarah's husband, the reliable contractor who showed up when things needed fixing. I found Tommy in the parking lot, loading sample cases into his BMW. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, artificially tanned, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. His smile was white and perfect, the kind that came from good genes and expensive dentistry. "Tommy Patterson?" I walked up to him like I belonged there. He looked confused but nodded. "That's me. Do we know each other?" "Dave Sullivan. I think we have some mutual interests to discuss." The color drained from his face. He'd clearly figured out who I was. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." I handed him a printout of his most explicit message exchange with Sarah. Interesting reading. I especially liked the part about the handcuffs. Tommy looked around the parking lot, nervous. "Listen, we should talk about this somewhere private." "No need. I just wanted to let you know that Linda might be interested in your reading habits." I started walking back to my truck. "Have a great day, Tommy." I left him standing there, holding the evidence of his affair, sweating through his expensive suit. The seed was planted. Now it was time to water it. That evening, I called the Patterson house. Linda answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Patterson? This is Dave Sullivan from Sullivan Construction. I found some personal items that might belong to your husband. He left them at a job site." "Personal items?" "Some clothing and, well, let's just say some things that look like they might be important to him. I'd rather not get into details over the phone, if you know what I mean." There was a pause. "What kind of clothing?" "Women's costumes, nurse uniforms, that sort of thing." "Look, Mrs. Patterson, I don't want to cause any problems, but I thought you should know." Another pause, longer this time. "Where did you say you found these?" I gave her the address of a motel on the outskirts of town, one of those places that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions about names on credit cards. "Room 237. The manager gave me your husband's name when I asked about the registration." "I see. Thank you for calling, Mr. Sullivan." The line went dead. I sat back in my recliner and cracked open a beer. Let the games begin. Tuesday morning brought the first casualty. Tommy called in sick to work, which was interesting since I'd seen him at the hospital the day before looking perfectly healthy. Sarah came home from work unusually quiet, picking at her dinner and checking her phone every few minutes. "Everything okay at the hospital?" I asked. "Fine, just some staffing issues." She wouldn't meet my eyes. Wednesday, the other shoe dropped. Sarah's phone rang during dinner, and I could hear angry shouting from the other end, even though she'd answered on the first ring and immediately left the room. "No, Linda, you don't understand," I heard her saying from the hallway. "It's not what you think." Apparently, Linda Patterson had done some investigating of her own and tracked down Sarah's number from the hospital directory. The conversation was brief but heated, ending with Sarah returning to the kitchen, looking like she'd seen a ghost. "Work emergency," she said, but her hands were shaking. Thursday brought a surprise visit. I was in my workshop behind the house sharpening saw blades when Linda Patterson knocked on my back door. She was smaller than she'd looked from a distance, but there was steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Linda Patterson. I think we need to talk." I invited her into my workshop, offered her a folding chair, and waited for her to speak first. "My husband has been having an affair with your wife," she said without preamble. "I found evidence in his car yesterday. Hotel receipts, text messages, photographs that I wish I'd never seen." I nodded. "I know. I found out a few days ago myself." "How long has this been going on?" "Near as I can tell, about 8 months." She absorbed this, her jaw tightening. "He thinks I'm stupid. Thinks I don't notice him coming home late. The new cologne, the way he guards his phone like it's state secrets." "What do you want to do about it?" Linda Patterson looked me dead in the eye. "I want to destroy them both." Now we were talking my language. Tommy's been skimming money from our joint accounts, she continued. Small amounts. Nothing I'd notice unless I was looking for it. He's been building a nest egg with your wife, planning to leave me and the kids with nothing. Sarah's doing the same thing. Our savings account has been draining for months. I pulled out the bank statements I'd been reviewing. Look at these withdrawals, all made when I was working out-of-town jobs. We spent the next hour comparing notes, building a timeline of the affair, documenting the financial theft, and planning our counterattack. Linda was smart, ruthless in the way that only a betrayed woman could be. Together, we were going to make Tommy and Sarah wish they'd never met. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We were going to give them exactly what they thought they wanted, each other, and make sure everyone knew about it. Step one was embarrassment. Linda had access to Tommy's company phone and laptop through their family plan. While he was at work Friday morning, she forwarded his entire message thread with Sarah to his boss at MedCorp, along with a note expressing her concern about her husband using company time and equipment for personal matters. Tommy was fired by noon. Step two was exposure. I printed out the most damning of Sarah's messages and anonymously mailed copies to her supervisor at the hospital, along with a note about inappropriate use of hospital resources for personal communications during work hours. Step three was the nuclear option. Friday night, Sarah worked late again, or claimed to. I followed her from the hospital to the Sleepy Inn motel, the same place I'd told Linda about. She parked next to Tommy's BMW, and they disappeared into room 237 like clockwork. I waited in the parking lot for an hour, then made my move. The motel room door was flimsy, the kind of hollow core construction that wouldn't stop a determined toddler, but I didn't need to break it down. I had better tools at my disposal. I'd brought a cordless drill, a length of heavy chain, and a padlock from my workshop. It took me less than 2 minutes to drill holes through the door frame and chain it shut from the outside. Tommy and Sarah were locked in their love nest with no way out, except the bathroom window, which was too small for either of them to crawl through. Then I made the calls. First call, Linda Patterson. They're here, room 237 at the Sleepy Inn. Bring your camera. Second call, the Sleepy Inn front desk. There's some kind of disturbance in room 237. Sounds like people fighting. You might want to check on them. Third call, Sarah's sister Beth, who lived across town and had never liked me much. Beth, it's Dave. I'm at the Sleepy Inn on Route 9. Sarah's in room 237, and I think you should see this for yourself. Fourth call, Tommy's brother Mike, whose number I'd gotten from Linda. Mike, this is Dave Sullivan. I'm a friend of Linda's. Tommy's in some trouble at the Sleepy Inn, room 237. He's going to need family support. By the time I was finished making calls, I could hear Tommy and Sarah shouting from inside the room, pulling on the door, trying to figure out why they couldn't get out. The chain was holding beautifully. Linda arrived first, pulling up in her minivan just as the motel manager was walking across the parking lot with his master key. She had a camera and a determined expression. "Is that them?" she asked. I nodded toward the chain door where muffled voices were still arguing. "All yours." The manager was a thin man in his 60s who looked like he'd seen everything the world had to offer and wasn't impressed by any of it. "What's going on here?" "Family emergency," Linda said sweetly. "My husband is in that room with his girlfriend. I just need to document some things for my divorce attorney." The manager looked at the chain, looked at Linda, looked at me. "You know I could call the cops." "You could," I agreed. "Or you could let a lady handle her personal business and avoid having police cars in your parking lot on a Friday night." He thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. 5 minutes. "Then I want everyone gone." Linda used her key to unlock the chain, she'd been practicing with the one I'd given her, and threw open the door. The scene inside was everything I'd hoped for and more. Sarah was hastily trying to put on her nurse costume, while Tommy scrambled for his pants. They both looked like deer caught in headlights, frozen in guilt and panic. "Smile for the camera, honey," Linda said, snapping photo after photo. "These are going to look great in court." "Linda, wait," Tommy started, but she cut him off. 15 years of marriage, Tommy. 15 years, 2 kids, and this is how you repay me? With some hospital administrator in a cheap motel room? Sarah had found her voice. "You don't understand the situation." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Linda replied. "You're both cheating liars who got caught. Now stand up straight and smile. The judge is going to love these." By this time, Beth had arrived, along with Tommy's brother Mike. The motel parking lot was turning into a family reunion from heck. Beth took one look at the scene and started screaming at Sarah about family values and embarrassing the whole clan. Mike was trying to calm everyone down while also attempting to get his brother dressed and out of the room. I stood back and watched the chaos unfold, feeling a deep satisfaction settle in my chest. This was better than I'd imagined. Sarah and Tommy weren't just caught. They were humiliated, exposed in front of their families, their dignity stripped away along with their clothes. But I wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, I got up early and drove to the MedCorp office building. Tommy's company car was still in the parking lot, probably because he hadn't had time to return it before getting fired. The BMW was locked, but the windows were down about an inch, just enough space to work with. I had a can of expanding foam insulation in my truck, the kind contractors use to seal gaps around pipes and windows. It expands to about 50 times its original size and hardens like concrete. I inserted the tube through the gap in the window and filled the entire interior of Tommy's car with foam. The seats, the dashboard, the steering wheel, the gear shift, everything was buried under 3 feet of hardened insulation. Tommy's pretty boy car looked like a science experiment gone wrong. Saturday afternoon brought another gift. Sarah came home from another emergency meeting at the hospital, probably damage control sessions with her supervisors, and found all of her belongings neatly stacked on the front lawn. Every piece of clothing, every book, every cosmetic, every personal item she'd accumulated during our marriage was sitting in cardboard boxes on the grass. I'd even included the nun costume, still in its plastic dry cleaning bag. "Dave, what is this?" she demanded, marching up to the front door where I was sitting on the porch with a beer. "Spring cleaning," I said. "Figured you might want your stuff since you'll be moving in with Tommy soon." "You can't do this. This is my house, too." "Actually, I can. See, the house is in my name only. I bought it before we got married, and the deed never got changed. Legally, you're just a guest here, and I'm asking you to leave." Sarah's face went through several interesting color changes. "This is ridiculous. We can work this out." "Work what out? The part where you've been stealing money from our account to fund your love nest with Tommy? Or the part where you've been lying to me for 8 months while planning to disappear with our savings?" She started to argue, but I held up the printed messages from her burner phone. "I've got documentation, Sarah. Every message, every plan, every dirty detail of your little romance. You want to take this to court, we can do that. But I don't think you'll like how it turns out." The fight went out of her then. She looked at the boxes on the lawn, at the house she could no longer enter, at me, sitting calmly on the porch like I didn't have a care in the world. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Maybe Tommy has room for you in his foam-filled car. She loaded her boxes into her Honda without another word, making 3 trips back and forth between the car and the lawn. Neighbors were watching from their windows, some pretending to work in their gardens while obviously eavesdropping on every word. As Sarah drove away, Mrs. Henderson from next door walked over with a casserole dish. "Dave, honey, I made too much tuna noodle casserole. Thought you might want some company for dinner." Mrs. Henderson had been our neighbor for 12 years, and this was the first time she'd ever offered to share a meal. The neighborhood gossip network was already at work, and apparently the consensus was that I was the injured party deserving sympathy. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Henderson." "That girl never deserved you," she said, patting my arm. Anyone with eyes could see she thought she was too good for this neighborhood. Sunday brought the final act. Linda called me early in the morning. "Tommy's been trying to contact Sarah all weekend. He's desperate to figure out their next move." "What do you want to do about it?" "I want to give them one last chance to be together." We met at the Sleepy Inn, the same motel where this had all started. Linda had convinced Tommy to meet her there under the pretense of discussing their divorce terms. I'd told Sarah that Tommy wanted to see her to plan their escape. They arrived within minutes of each other, both looking haggard and desperate. Tommy had borrowed his brother's car since his BMW was still sitting in the MedCorp parking lot, like a modern art sculpture. Sarah looked like she'd been sleeping in her Honda. I'd reserved the same room, 237, and chained the door shut again once they were inside. But this time, instead of their families, I'd invited a different audience. The first to arrive was Janet Murphy, the head administrator at St. Mary's Hospital and Sarah's boss. I'd called her Saturday night and suggested she might want to see some evidence regarding one of her employees' unprofessional conduct. Next came Robert Hayes from MedCorp's corporate office. I'd mailed him copies of Tommy's messages the previous week, along with a note about employee misconduct and misuse of company resources. Finally, I'd invited Channel 7 News, anonymous tip about corruption in the local medical community, possible insurance fraud involving hospital administrators and pharmaceutical representatives. They ate that stuff up. By the time I unlocked the chain, there were cameras rolling and notebooks open. Tommy and Sarah stumbled out of the motel room to find their professional lives waiting for them in the parking lot. "Mr. Patterson," the Channel 7 reporter thrust a microphone in Tommy's face, "is it true that you were using your position as a pharmaceutical representative to engage in kickback schemes with hospital personnel?" Tommy looked like he was going to vomit. "No comment." "Miss Sullivan, how do you respond to allegations that you were trading hospital contracts for personal favors?" Sarah tried to push past the cameras. "This is maltreatment. I'm calling my lawyer." But the damage was done. The story ran that night. Local hospital administrator and pharmaceutical rep caught in corruption scandal. The details were salacious enough to guarantee it would be picked up by other news outlets. Monday morning, Sarah was fired from St. Mary's Hospital. Tommy was blacklisted from the pharmaceutical industry. Their professional reputations were destroyed. Their personal lives were in ruins, and their dreams of running away together had evaporated like morning dew. I was in my workshop sharpening chisels when Sarah showed up for the last time. She looked older somehow, like the past week had aged her 5 years. "I hope you're satisfied," she said. I looked up from my workbench. "Pretty much. You destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my future. I didn't destroy anything. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd built for yourself." She started crying then, real tears instead of the manipulative kind she used to use when she wanted something. "We could have worked this out, gone to counseling, tried to save our marriage. With what? The money you stole? The trust you broke? The respect you threw away for a cheap thrill with a pharmaceutical rep? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. You made your choice, Sarah. You chose Tommy over me. Lies over truth, selfishness over commitment. I just made sure you got to live with the consequences." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Same thing everyone else does when they make bad choices. Figure it out." She turned to leave, then paused at the workshop door. "You used to be a good man, Dave." "I still am. I just stopped being a stupid one." After she left, I sat in the quiet of my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and took inventory of my life. The house was mine, free and clear. The business was solid, with enough work booked to keep me busy through the winter. My reputation in the community was intact, better than intact, actually, since word had gotten around that I'd been the wrong party in the whole mess. Tommy and Sarah had found each other, just like they'd planned. They were both unemployed, both disgraced, both dependent on each other in ways they'd never intended. From what I'd heard through the gossip network, they'd moved into a studio apartment across town and were working at a discount store, trying to rebuild their lives from scratch. Linda had gotten her divorce, along with most of Tommy's assets and a comfortable alimony settlement. The kids were doing well, apparently relieved to be free of their father's constant lies and manipulation. As for me, I was exactly where I'd started, in my workshop, with my tools, building things that would last. The only difference was that now I knew the value of a solid foundation, and I wasn't about to settle for anything less ever again. I picked up my phone and deleted all the photos I'd taken, erased all the evidence I'd collected, and threw Sarah's burner phone in the trash. The war was over, and I'd won completely. Some people might say I went too far, that my revenge was too thorough, too devastating. But those people had never been betrayed by someone they trusted with their entire life. They'd never discovered that their marriage was a lie, their savings were being stolen, and their future was being sold for the price of a cheap motel room. I had built Sarah up, supported her career, sacrificed my own comfort for her ambitions, and loved her unconditionally for 15 years. In return, she'd planned to destroy me and disappear with another man, so yeah, I went nuclear. I scorched the earth and salted the ground so nothing could grow there again, but I did it cleanly, legally, and completely. No one got physically hurt, no laws were broken, and justice was served with a precision that would make a master carpenter proud. Sarah thought I was too stupid to figure out her game. She was wrong about that, just like she was wrong about everything else. Sometimes the underdog wins, sometimes the smart money loses, and sometimes a simple contractor with calloused hands and a high school education can outmaneuver a hospital administrator and a pharmaceutical rep so completely that they never see it coming. The house was quiet now, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. I cracked open a beer, turned on the baseball game, and settled into my recliner. Tomorrow, I'd start framing the Hendersons' new edition. Good, honest work that would last for decades. Tonight, I was just going to sit here and enjoy the silence, the satisfaction, and the knowledge that sometimes the good guys do win, especially when they're smart enough to use the right tools for the job.